Ismael Vadi has been on the road this week, not as the Gauteng government's road and transport boss, but in his personal capacity as a writer passionate about this country's history. In this case, it's about a historical event that took place about 50 meters from where he was born, here in Kliptown. Vadi has written a brief history of the People's Congress that led to the drafting of the Freedom Charter, celebrating 60 years this weekend.
The Congress of the People and the Freedom Charter, it's a people's history. What it does is that it recollects, it's a historical study of the campaign for the Congress of the People and the Freedom Charter, which was held over the weekend of the 25th and 26th of June 1955. So it's 60 years ago. It was held on this particular site, which the city of Johannesburg has kindly dedicated as a square of dedication in memory of one of the veterans of the African National Congress, Walter Sisulu. What the book does is that it traces the history over a period of 18 months. The initial idea of the Congress of the People was sponsored by Professor Z.K. Matthews, who was the leader of the ANC in the Cape Province then. He said that, look, we've been fighting against apartheid, we're fighting against this Bantu education or against high bus fares, whatever the case might be. But what do we stand for? What is our vision of a new society, of an alternative society to an apartheid society, which the National Party had just come into power a few years before that, and had begun to implement very rigidly, very harshly, full-blown system of apartheid and racial separation, segregation of schools, segregation of universities. The Immorality Act was passed so that people across races could not get married, could not have normal relationships. So Professor Matthews put forward this idea that the time had come for us to begin to consider a new kind of a society. And I think the ANC took to that idea and then decided that, look, what we might want to do is to launch a national campaign. Get ordinary people in the townships, in the villages, in the farms, in the factories, to talk about their own experiences and what's their vision or their conceptualization of a new South Africa or an alternative or post-apartheid South Africa. And so once the ANC adopted this idea, it was supported by the other Congress-aligned organizations, the South African Indian Congress, the South African Congress of Democrats, South African Colored People's Organization, and then when the trade union was formed, the South African Congress of Trade Unions, they also supported this particular campaign. So the volunteers, the activists, the members of these various organizations had crisscrossed the length and breadth of the country, gone to people on their, in their homes, on the farms, in the villages, etc., and asked a very simple question: what does freedom mean to you? If you had it your way, what kind of a society would you like? And people put forward their demands. Some wrote them down on crumpled pieces of paper, on exercise books. Others sent in their demands, sent in their petitions. But the power of the Freedom Charter is that it has emerged from the ranks of ordinary people. It was a bottom-up kind of a campaign which led to a very powerful document, a one-page document which sets out what the demands are of the liberation movements of the time and what kind of a society they envisaged. I mean, it's rare to see a document such as this on one page, which any person can pick up, easy to understand, and says, this is the kind of society we want. I mean, we have many other documents from the French Revolution, the American Revolution, etc., the Bill of Rights. These are lengthy pieces. But to have crystallized it in one single page and to put forward a coherent vision of a new society, I think that's the power of the Freedom Charter. So this book traces the history of that campaign. It looks, at that time, we only had 4 provinces, so it was Transvaal, Orange Free State, Natal, and the Cape Province. It looks at the work of the various sponsoring organizations in the various provinces, and then it talks about the collection process, the kinds of demands, the actual experiences of the volunteers, and then it analyzes the Freedom Charter within the context of the 1950s.
Ismael Vadi's politicization took place on campus. Typically, his terrain was the grounds of Wits University in the aftermath of 1976. He leaned towards the black consciousness politics prevalent at the time before joining the ANC, which he is still a member of. Vadi reminds that while we may have a functioning democracy with a constitution celebrated the world over, there's still much to be done.
If you read the bill, the section in the Bill of Rights, it's almost a rehearsal or a reproduction of the Freedom Charter. The key demands are actually captured in that. But the times have changed. The world has changed substantially in the last 60 years. And I think what we can safely say is that many of the political demands of the Freedom Charter, I believe, have been realized. So we have a democracy, every person has a right to vote. We have freedom of speech, freedom of the media, freedom of movement and association. People have the right to form trade unions and to move about freely. Of course, we've got equality in the courts. So human dignity, very important. Human dignity has been affirmed. Very important part, because I mean the indignities that people suffered under apartheid, that is known. So the humanity has been affirmed. But I think where we are falling short in the last 21 years is that many of the economic demands of the Freedom Charter, I think, some of it we've realized it in part, but I think we've still got a way to go. And the challenge for our generation and for the next generation is to see how we can get the Freedom Charter fully realized, particularly the economic clauses of the Charter.